I wasn't supposed to be there that night. And subscribe and leave a comment that keeps playing in my head on a loop. Enjoy the story. Like some kind of sick joke. It was a work dinner. Her boss got promoted or transferred or whatever, and they were celebrating at some mid-tier restaurant off Lincoln Avenue. She mentioned it so casually, like it barely registered on her radar. Just dinner with the team, she said, pouring herself coffee one morning without even looking at me. I remember nodding, maybe muttering something like, "Have fun." I didn't really care. We were both so used to our routines that we barely noticed how far apart we'd gotten. I'd already told her I wasn't going. I hate those things. Being stuck with a bunch of people I don't know. Smiling through small talk while pretending I give a damn about corporate promotions. Julia didn't seem to care that I wasn't coming, and honestly, that should have been my first clue. No, come on, you never come to these. No playful guilt trip. Just a shrug. Like it didn't matter either way. Maybe it didn't. That day had already been kind of a mess. Work dragged. Traffic was a nightmare. And by the time I got home, I was ready to throw on sweatpants and lose myself in something brainless on TV. I remember going through my pockets, realizing my keys weren't where they should have been. I checked the entry table, the kitchen counter, nothing. I retraced my steps and figured I must have left them at the cafe where I stopped for a late lunch. It was only a few blocks away, so I threw my jacket back on and headed out. I was about halfway there when I passed this restaurant, Layton's. Trendy place, always packed, valet out front. And there it was, her car. Julia's silver Civic, parked all wrong. Like someone had swung into the space too fast. The nose was up on the curb. I stopped dead in my tracks. For a second, I thought maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she parked here and walked somewhere else. Maybe someone else is driving her car. Maybe. But then the valet opened the door for a couple, and I could see straight inside. And there she was. Felt like the world went quiet. My pulse was thundering in my ears, but everything else. The traffic, the sidewalk chatter, even the music drifting from the restaurant's speakers, just faded. She was sitting near the back, by the window, in one of those corner booths they save for couples who want privacy. I had to squint at first, thinking maybe it wasn't her. But it was. Her hair was up the way she only ever wore it when she wanted to feel extra put together. Her lipstick was darker than usual. Her dress, green with those little gold threads woven through it, was one I hadn't seen in almost a year. And sitting next to her was a man I didn't recognize. He wasn't wearing a suit, not really. Just a dress shirt, sleeves rolled, tie loosened like he was trying to play it cool. His hand was on her waist. Not tentatively, but like it had been there for a while. She leaned into him. Her smile was soft, familiar, the kind of smile that used to belong to me. That's when I knew. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't some awkward misunderstanding or innocent dinner. This was comfort, practice, repetition. This was betrayal fully formed. I walked in. I don't remember making the decision to do it, not consciously. My feet just moved. The host gave me a nod, didn't stop me. I guess I looked like I belonged. I guess I did. Each step I took felt slower than the last. Like time had started stretching, pulling everything out. My breath was tight in my chest, my mouth dry, but I kept moving, my eyes fixed on them. They didn't notice me right away. She was laughing. Not a polite chuckle or a fake work giggle, the real kind. The kind I hadn't heard in months. Maybe longer. The sound hit me harder than anything else. When she finally looked up and saw me, she froze. But not in guilt. Not even fear. Just confusion. Like she didn't expect to see me, and now she had to rewrite the entire scene in her head. I expected panic. Flinch. Something. Instead, she just blinked. Her mouth opened a little, like she was about to say my name, but nothing came out. The guy? He didn't even react. He kept eating. Fork to plate. Bite. Chew. Sip of wine. Like I didn't exist. Like he'd already counted on me not being there. That more than anything made me feel sick. I stood at the edge of their table, maybe a foot away. I didn't say a word. Neither did she. I stared at him for what felt like an hour, then looked at her. My wife. The woman I'd built a life with. The woman who used to look at me like I was her world. Now she looked like a stranger. I waited for her to explain, to reach for me, to do anything but sit there like she'd been caught in traffic. Inconvenienced. She didn't move. I could feel the stares from other tables. People were starting to notice. The tension. The stillness. A few heads turned. I didn't care. Finally, I said the only thing I could think to say. Wow! My voice came out low, cracked. Barely a whisper. But she heard it. I saw it land. She opened her mouth again, but I turned around before she could speak. I walked out the way I came. Straight past the host, out the door, into the cool air of the street. My hands were shaking. My heart was hammering so loud I thought I might pass out. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I laughed. A single, sharp laugh. Not out of humor. God, no. It was pure release. Like something finally snapped inside me, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something. The worst part? It didn't feel like the world had ended. Felt like it had just started. I kept walking. Didn't know where I was going. Just knew I had to move. My legs were carrying me through downtown like I was on autopilot, past bars, glowing windows, couples walking hand in hand like nothing in the world could touch them. I probably looked crazy, maybe like I was drunk. Maybe I was, in a way, drunk on the shock, the betrayal, the weird weightless numbness that settles in when you've just had your entire world split open and you don't even feel it yet. I ended up by the river. There's this old railing near the pedestrian bridge, where people hang those little padlocks to pretend their love is eternal or whatever. I leaned on it, staring down at the black water below, listening to the current rushing by. For a minute I just breathed, in and out. That was all I could do. That was all I had. I wasn't even mad yet. Not really. Not in the way I thought I'd be. I always figured if something like this ever happened, I'd explode, break something, yell until my throat went raw. But there was none of that. Just this slow burn that started in my chest and spread outward. Not fire. Not rage. Just this cold heat, like a quiet furnace. Like frostbite setting in. Eventually, I pulled out my phone. No missed calls. No texts. Nothing from her. For a second, I thought maybe she was still with him. Maybe she hadn't even noticed I left. Or maybe she was too busy figuring out how to spin this. How to lie her way through it with some half-truth about what I saw. I unlocked the screen and stared at our wallpaper. Some old photo of us in Asheville, smiling with coffee in our hands, surrounded by autumn trees. It felt like a scene from someone else's life. I deleted it with one tap. Still no messages. I scrolled through my contacts, thumb hovering over her name, and then I switched apps. I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing she had me in freefall. I was done making it easy for her. I walked until my feet started to hurt, then circled back toward the restaurant. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me hoped they'd still be there, and I could go back in and really let loose this time. Or maybe I was testing myself, seeing how close I could get before I cracked. But they were gone. Her car was still there though, parked exactly the same, nose on the curb, tilted like it didn't belong. It suddenly looked pathetic. Small. Out of place. Just like her. I stood there for a long time, staring at it. I thought about leaving a note on the windshield. Something cruel. Something final. But what would that even do? Give her the upper hand? Let her know she still had a piece of me? No, I wasn't giving her that. Instead, I walked back to the side of the restaurant. Not the front. The alley where the employees take smoke breaks. It was quiet. The dumpsters lined up against the wall. A faint smell of grease and cigarettes hanging in the air. And there, sitting on a crate and scrolling through his phone, was the guy. Her guy. He was alone. Tie still loose. Jacket slung over the back of a nearby chair. Like he had all the time in the world. I didn't plan what happened next. It just happened. I stepped up, said nothing. He looked up, recognized me immediately, and straightened a bit like he was getting ready to say something. Before he could, I reached for the nearest water pitcher on a tray beside him. Some server must have left it behind. I poured the whole thing in his lap. Ice water. Loud splash. Glass clinked against his belt buckle. He gasped and jumped up, stumbling back. What the hell, man? I stared him down. Just stared. His shirt soaked, pants clinging to him, his mouth open like he wanted to throw a punch but couldn't figure out if he should. He looked ridiculous. I didn't say a word. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I could hear him swearing under his breath, but he didn't follow. He didn't call for me. Just stood there, dripping, probably wondering if I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had, but I felt calm. More calm than I'd felt in months. The moment wasn't about revenge. It wasn't some heroic move or act of justice. It was simple. I needed to remind him, and maybe myself, that I existed. That I wasn't some ghost in Julia's life. That I was real. That this meant something. I didn't go home after that. Couldn't. The idea of walking into our apartment, seeing her purse on the counter, the scent of her shampoo in the bathroom, the framed photos that suddenly meant nothing. It made my skin crawl. Instead, I called my cousin Kevin. He didn't ask questions. Just gave me the address to his place and said the studio above the garage was open. I stopped by a gas station on the way, grabbed a six-pack and a toothbrush, and drove across town. Kevin met me at the door, didn't say a word. Just pulled me into a hug, slapped my back once, and handed over the keys. The studio was dusty. One saggy couch, a crooked floor lamp, an old rug that smelled faintly of mildew. But there was no trace of her there. No shared history. No reminders. That made it feel like a palace. I sat down on the couch and cracked open a beer. My phone buzzed on the table. Her name on the screen. I ignored it. Then another message. And another. I didn't look. I just turned the phone over and watched the ceiling fan spin slowly above me. Outside, I could hear the occasional car passing by. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn. People living their lives. Mine had just been pulled out from under me. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on something solid. Not with her, just with myself. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I just lay there on that lumpy couch, staring at the ceiling like it owed me answers. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Frozen in that moment when she looked up from her little affair and realized the real world had caught up with her. It wasn't guilt I saw in her eyes. Not panic. Just surprise. Like she forgot I existed. The messages started around midnight. First just one. Can we talk? Then another and another. They came in flurries, like she was firing off every version of the story she could think of, hoping one might stick. It's not what it looked like. Please, let's just talk. I can explain everything. You misunderstood. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't respond. At around 2 in the morning, she called. I watched the screen light up and go dark 3 times. Then a voicemail. I didn't listen to it. By 4, she'd shifted tone. Her texts changed shape, from remorseful to defensive. I can't believe you made a scene. You embarrassed me in front of my colleagues. That wasn't fair to anyone. As if my reaction was the issue. As if dumping ice water on her secret boyfriend's lap had been the real betrayal. I laughed. Out loud. Alone in the dark. Not because it was funny, but because the mental gymnastics were almost impressive. By dawn, her text slowed. She'd gone quiet. Maybe she was asleep. Maybe she ran out of excuses. Maybe she was regrouping, writing a new version of the story where she was the one who'd been wronged. I didn't care. I finally fell asleep sometime around 6. For maybe an hour. Then I got up, showered, and went out for coffee like a guy who had just started over. I wasn't sure who I was now, but I knew who I wasn't. I wasn't the man who got cheated on and came home with flowers the next day. I wasn't the guy who forgave betrayal because it made things less awkward at dinner parties. I wasn't the idiot she assumed would stay quiet. 3 days passed before I went back to the apartment. She wasn't there. I almost hoped she would be, but also knew I wasn't ready to see her. Not with real words. Not with eye contact. I just wanted to grab my essentials and get out. The apartment was clean. Too clean. The bed was made. The counters wiped down. The fridge had a note on it, handwritten, like she couldn't bear to say it out loud. It was a list of things she wanted to keep. The blender, her record player, the armchair from her office, the blue ceramic dishes we bought in Vermont. Stuff. Not a single mention of memories, or photos, or anything remotely emotional. Just possessions like she was splitting up roommates after a lease ended. Cold. Methodical. I walked through the apartment slowly, touching things like I was touring a museum of someone else's life. The photos on the mantle suddenly looked staged. Our wedding picture. Me in that too tight tux, her in that backless dress. Felt like a **T from a dream I never actually had. I grabbed what I needed. My laptop, some clothes, the old coffee maker she always said was too loud and ugly. I took it on purpose, not out of spite, just because it was mine. The only thing in the kitchen that felt like me. I left the note on the fridge right where she put it. I didn't throw it away. I didn't cross anything out. I wanted her to know I read it and didn't care. Back at Kevin's, I dumped everything in a heap on the floor and sat down with the loud coffee maker humming beside me. I let it fill the room with its growl, the way it used to in the mornings before she started sleeping in and pulling away. I didn't check my phone. I knew there'd be more messages, maybe even a long one, filled with flowery language and selective honesty. I didn't care to hear it. Instead, I started doing something I hadn't done in a long time. I carved. Years ago, before life got busy, I used to mess around with woodwork. Small stuff. Bowls, frames, keychains. Nothing fancy. Julia always called it messy and said the shavings got everywhere. Eventually, I stopped, sold my tools, buried the part of myself that liked it. Kevin still had a few things in his garage. I set up a little corner with what I could find and just worked. No goal, no design, just hands-on wood, blade in motion. Something about it felt grounding. Each cut made sense. Each curl of shaved bark landed where it was supposed to. That night I slept better. Not great, but better. I didn't hear from her again until the weekend. She texted once, short and sharp. "You can't ignore me forever." Actually, I could, but I didn't need to reply to make that point. On Monday, I spoke to a lawyer. Just a consultation. But it felt like oxygen after days underwater. He asked the usual questions. How long had we been married? Was there evidence of the affair? What was the living situation? I told him everything, left out nothing. He listened without flinching. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and nodded. "You've got what you need. If you want to move fast, we can." I said I'd think about it. But I already knew. By Wednesday, I'd filed the preliminary paperwork. Julia was officially served 2 days later. I didn't deliver them myself. I didn't want to see her face. I just got a text later that said, "So this is how it ends?" I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was reconsidering, but because it was the first thing she'd said that sounded remotely like her. Like the real her. Not the version who lied to my face. Not the one who leaned into another man in a dim restaurant like she'd never loved anyone else. The version I married. But even then, she wasn't asking how I was. She wasn't sorry. She was still trying to control the narrative. So this is how it ends? No. It ended in that booth. With her head on his shoulder. With his hand around her waist. With a laugh that wasn't mine anymore. This was just the part where I got my name back. She showed up a week later. No warning. No text. No knock on the door. Just a light tapping at the window of the studio above Kevin's garage. Soft, tentative. Like she wasn't sure if she wanted to be heard. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through a book I wasn't really reading. When I heard the noise, I almost didn't get up. I figured it was a branch or something caught in the wind. But then it came again. Rhythmic. Measured. Human. I pulled the curtain back. And there she was. Julia. She stood outside in the driveway, wrapped in a hoodie. Not just any hoodie. My hoodie. The navy one she used to complain made me look like a sad college student. The one she always tried to convince me to throw out. Now she wore it like it meant something. I opened the door, stepped outside. The cold air hit me first, then her perfume, the one I hadn't smelled in weeks. Sweet and sharp. She always used too much. She looked tired. Her hair was tied back, like she hadn't bothered to do much with it. No makeup. Eyes puffy. Hands tucked into the sleeves of the sweatshirt like she was 12 again. trying to look small. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at me, eyes scanning my face, like she was trying to find something still familiar. I didn't say anything either. I crossed my arms and waited. She finally broke the silence. "Can we talk?" I just stared. Her shoulders fell slightly. "Please." I nodded once, just enough to let her speak, but I didn't invite her in. She shifted on her feet. "I know you're angry. I don't blame you. But She stopped, took a breath. "I want to explain." "I don't need explanations," I said. My voice came out flatter than I intended. Not angry, not even cold, just done. "You deserve one anyway," she said quickly, like she'd rehearsed it, like she came here to read a script. She stepped forward slightly, and I stepped back. She caught the message and stopped. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you," she continued. "But it wasn't like I set out to destroy what we had. Things were bad for a while and I didn't know how to fix it. I felt invisible, like we were just two people sharing space, not a marriage. I didn't move. I didn't flinch." She kept going. "He made me feel like I mattered again, like I was seen. But it wasn't love. It wasn't even that serious. It was a distraction. And it's over now." I almost laughed at that. It's over now. Like that changed anything. Like calling time out after the fire has already gutted the house does anything except confirm you lit the match. "I know I can't undo it," she said, her voice softer. "But maybe we could start over. Not go back. Just figure out if something new is possible." There it was. Not an apology. Not even a confession. A negotiation. A plea wrapped in strategy. I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't feel pulled in 10 different directions. I didn't feel a rush of pain or rage or heartbreak. I just felt clarity. "This isn't something you get to rewrite," I said. "You made choices. You did this. You ended it long before I filed anything." Her lips trembled, but she didn't cry. That surprised me. She always used to cry. At movies, commercials, little things. But now, nothing. She knew. She'd come here hoping there was still a version of me that wanted to fix it, that still saw her as the woman I'd built my life around. But that man, the one who waited for her to come home every night hoping things would get better, he was gone. "Is that it?" I asked. She blinked, like the question caught her off guard. "I just wanted you to know I still care." I nodded slowly. "Okay." That was it. Not cruel. Not theatrical. Just final. She stood there a moment longer, then gave a slight nod of her own and turned to leave. I watched her walk back down the driveway, the sleeves of my hoodie pulled over her hands, the hood still down. She didn't look back. That part of the movie was over. When I closed the door behind me, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt quiet, and that quiet was everything. Over the next week, I cleaned out the studio like it was mine to keep. Kevin didn't say a word. He just helped me bring in a better mattress and lent me his shop vac. I threw out the worn rug, opened the windows, rearranged the bookshelves, started turning the space into something that felt less like a place I landed and more like a place I chose. Julia's name came up a few times in texts from mutual friends. Some were surprised. Others said things like, "I always wondered if something was off there." One message stood out. Someone said they'd seen her and the guy together months ago at an art show. She told them we were working through a separation. That was news to me, so that's how she softened the blow. She rewrote the story before I even had a chance to turn the page. But honestly, it didn't even sting. It felt predictable. Felt like just one more mask falling away. I kept the divorce process moving. She didn't push back. No long emails. No calls. Just an acceptance I hadn't expected. Maybe she thought silence would preserve her image. Or maybe she was too tired to keep spinning her version of the truth. I boxed up everything that still had her name on it. Letters, photos, receipts, books she never finished reading, and dropped it at her sister's place. No note. No closure. Just weight removed. I started cooking again. Badly. My first attempt at stir-fry nearly caught fire. But I laughed. Like genuinely laughed. burned food and all. I played music loud, took late-night walks, started sketching things again. Nothing special, just shapes, outlines, half-formed ideas. It felt good to make things instead of just surviving. One night, I walked past a mirror in the hallway and didn't recognize myself for a second. Not because I looked worse, because I looked real, not polished, not part of a we, just me. The divorce finalized 2 weeks later. No courtroom drama, no dramatic objections. Just a few digital signatures and a PDF from the county clerk's office. The subject line of the email was so mundane it felt almost insulting. Final judgment, dissolution of marriage. No exclamation point, no warning. Just a stamp of legal indifference on what used to be a life. I stared at the screen for a while. Then I shut the laptop, stood up, and went for a walk. There were no fireworks, no tears, no cinematic breakdown in the rain. It was quiet. It was still. And weirdly, that made it feel more real. Like the ending wasn't a bang, just a door slowly closing while I stood on the other side, already halfway down a new path. I told my mom the next day. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't even ask what happened. She just said, "I'm glad you're okay," and offered to bring over lasagna. Sometimes love is just that simple. I didn't tell everyone. Some people found out through whispers, some through silence. A few mutual friends drifted off entirely, probably closer to her side, or maybe they just didn't want to deal with the mess of picking a side. I didn't chase them. A week later, I matched with someone on a dating app. Not because I was ready necessarily, but because I wanted to see what it felt like. Her name was Hannah. She worked in nonprofit. She had this calm energy that didn't try to perform or impress. Just steady. Real. We met for coffee. Talked about movies and music. She asked questions like she actually wanted to know me, not size me up against some internal checklist. Eventually, I told her everything. Not on the first date, but not too far after. I wanted her to know the whole story. I didn't want to build something new on half-truths. She didn't flinch, didn't judge, just listened. And when I finished, she said, "Sounds like you survived something that should have broken you." I didn't say anything back. I just nodded. Because yeah, maybe I did. A few nights later, I walked past a wine bar near downtown. One of those trendy spots with candlelit tables and tiny plates that cost too much. I glanced through the window as I passed and saw her. Julia. She was sitting at the bar with him. The same guy. His hand rested on her leg, and she leaned into him like it was second nature. She laughed. Loud enough that I could hear it even through the glass. The same laugh I used to think was meant just for me. But I didn't stop. I didn't pause. I didn't feel my stomach drop or my hands shake. I just kept walking. Like they were strangers. Like I was finally free. 3 days later, she texted me. No greeting. No punctuation. Just, "You ever think about us?" I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. And then I closed it. Left it on read. Because that wasn't love. That wasn't even remorse. That was control dressed in nostalgia. And I wasn't hers to reach for anymore. I didn't block her. Didn't lash out. I didn't need to. Some endings are better when they're quiet. Like a book you finish and put back on the shelf. Not because it wasn't good once, but because the story is done and you're ready for something else. The studio above Kevin's became my home longer than I expected. I bought curtains she would have hated, dark ones patterned. I hung them crooked and never fixed them. I let the place smell like coffee and cedar shavings from my carving projects. I burnt toast on purpose just to fill the room with something imperfect and mine. I started calling old friends. Friends she didn't like. Friends I'd slowly let slip away because it was easier than arguing. We got beers. We talked late. And they never once asked why it took me so long to come back. I filled the silence in ways that mattered: bad guitar playing, long drives with no destination, taking pictures of ordinary things just because I could. And one day, I realized something that hit harder than anything else had. I didn't miss her. I missed the version of her I built in my head. The version I defended to my friends. The one I pictured when I justified the distance, the silence, the little lies. That woman never existed. The real Julia was someone else. Someone who needed more than I could ever give. But instead of telling me, she found someone else and let me rot in the dark. Smile by smile, excuse by excuse, until there was nothing left but me, walking on eggshells in my own home. And the worst part? I let it happen. I saw it coming. I felt it long before the night at Layton's, but I stayed. I tried to fix it, tried to outlove the sinking. I thought love was supposed to hurt sometimes. Turns out it's not. It's supposed to feel safe. Now it does. The next time someone asked me if I missed her,